Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Samdiego here, along with Daniel Zeri from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can keep us on the air by clicking the link to our Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution for your favorite on-air talent, and you get your name displayed on the air as well. And we thank everyone for investing in the Grid Network. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Daniel, we got to start with WEC, the race weekend for the Iron Dames. But then, of course, there was some big news in regards to WEC for next year as well. Very exciting times.
Oh, absolutely. WEC last weekend was racing at Fuji for the 6 hour of Fuji in Japan. After the European season was over, now they have one more round in Bahrain. So the two the season starting in the US and then it's gonna end in Asia. But last weekend was really big weekend for women in motorsport. We followed more than 40 races. And definitely one of the most interesting was the 6 hour of Fuji with, as you mentioned, both the Iron Dames and also Lilu Wadu in the number one LMP2 Oreca run by Richard Mille Racing Team were contesting their race. For Iron Dames, it was a very good weekend, especially after the Barcelona round of the European Le Mans Series, which really didn't go their way. Sarah Bovey put the car once again on the top on the front row of the grid. They started from second place in the LMGTE AM category. Another very good results in the single lap performance by the number 85 Ferrari of the Iron Dames. Sarah again started the race in the first stint, and while she immediately went into the lead, and was again another promising start for the Belgian driver. But it was soon clear that the Aston Martins were a lot faster on the long Fuji straight. This is down of balance of performance likely. We've seen both the Porsche and the Aston Martin being a lot faster than the Ferrari due to the BOP throughout the season, especially in Monza and in Le Mans. It was particularly an issue. But then, of course, Sarah lost a couple of positions to the Aston Martin, which were really a lot faster. But then, and towards the end of the stint, she kind of managed to bring the car back into a good position for Rahel Fry that did the second stint, and they managed to climb the order pretty quickly. They were in a position to it was Michelle Gatting in the second stint. Michelle was really quickly in a position to be on the podium. And then their race from there went pretty much straightforward because the strategy was once again spot on from the Italian team, and Michelle could bring the car back to Rahel Fry for the final stint. And Rahel did some great passes, some great battles for the Swiss driver in the final part of the race, and she was up to second. And at one point she really was in a position to just bring the car back home in second place, and was another podium. It was the first time in Monza last time out that a fully female crew stepped on the podium in the FIA WEC, and of course this is the first time that they can do a back-to-back podium. So another great result for the Iron Dames. So they had a couple of unlucky races at the start of the season in WEC, but again they have a really strong lineup, and they managed to finish second place. Another really strong result for them. It was also a strong race for Lilu Wadu, the French 21-year-old driver. That she's racing for the first year in sports car racing. She was doing the Alpine Europa Cup last year in GT4 cars. So big jump from a GT4 spec car to a LMP2 prototype. But really, she's managed to put some great performances this year. Top 10 in Le Mans on her first participation. Quite a lot of other top 10s. And again, she had a really strong start. Very good first stint for Lilu. She did the start, which is always kind of a tricky stint for especially in a class that big as the LMP2, with a lot of cars. She was 8th in her stint. Then Charles Milesi did the second stint, and unfortunately he got spun out in his stint, so they kind of had to recover a couple of positions. But with Paul Chatin doing the final part of the race, they were P9 across the line. So another good race for Richard Mille Racing Team. Another top 10 for them in as I mentioned in a big class. But also, Joe, as you said in our introduction, there were pretty important news from the FIA World Endurance Championship coming out today, like a couple of hours ago. The lineup for this year's young driver test, well, the rookie test, how was it called in WEC? Sees 2 female drivers out of 4 drivers of the 4 selected ones. These drivers have been selected by the FIA World Endurance Championships organization, and they have the opportunity to drive one day, at least 30 laps, as the statement said, on racing, well, testing the car that won the championship in a higher class. So, for example, Lilou Wadou, racing in LMP2 this year, she will have the opportunity to drive the hypercar, the championship winning hypercar. So far, still in contention. Toyota and the Alpine both can still win the championship after ahead of the last race in Bahrain. So Lilou will drive either the Toyota hypercar or the Alpine hypercar, and that is massive news because she will be the very first woman to drive hypercar, and the first woman since 2011 to drive the highest class of endurance racing worldwide, when Vanina X in 2011 raced at Le Mans in a LMP1 car. So that is pretty big news for Lilou, that only last year she was racing, as I mentioned, in GT4, and now having the opportunity to drive, to get behind the wheel of a hypercar is massive news. Also in the same test, we will have Dorian Pan, the young driver from Iron Dames. She's racing this weekend in Silverstone in the Ferrari Challenge Europe, a championship. She's been really dominant this year. She only had one racing WEC this year, and it was the 6 hour of Spa-Francorchamps, as she subbed in for Sarah Bovey. But she really impressed in that race, both the team and the FIA World Endurance Championship organization, since she will have the opportunity to drive the championship-winning LMP2 prototype. And also, that is the first time that Dorian gets the chance to drive an LMP2 prototype. So pretty big news for a couple of drivers.
Very big for both of them. That's very exciting, especially for Lilou to go into a hypercar next year. And of course, as you mentioned, this is part of the FIA. Do you think this is something where the FIA, if they do this annually to get female drivers to that upper class, we might see a female driver in hypercar, but not just in a reserve role or a testing role, on the grid on race day?
Well, that's an important question, because it's kind of the second year when WEC is giving opportunities to some female drivers. Last year, Sophia Flörsch was given the chance to drive it wasn't the top class, but it was still LMP2, but she got to drive the championship-winning LMP2 car with WRT, and she did extremely well. She topped the test overall in LMP2, and she was really close, I remember, to the Toyota hypercar times. So she did extremely well. And also Alice Powell and Jamie Chadwick were given the chance to, well, of course, they were just coming out of a really strong season in W Series. They had the chance to drive for in LMP2 with Richard Mille Racing Team, and also Lilou Wadou, and that's where the seat came the deal came up. She was she had the chance to drive at that test in Bahrain last year for Richard Mille Racing Team, and she got chosen to race this year. So it definitely, even though it's just one test day, they definitely have the chance to impress the team and get a chance to drive in a full-time role next year. That's definitely the goal.
It's very exciting to see this all, and then to, of course, such a historic moment. First time in a hypercar, and then so long since we had a female racer in the top class for sports car. We keep talking about this is going to be the golden age of motorsports, sports car racing with this new hypercar. Considering the versatility of how this car could go in North America, Europe, does this mean that we could see more female racers? Hey, sports car racing is probably the way I want to go because you could be in WEC, or you could be in IMSA. Do you think that could be starting to become a new trend rather than maybe the Formula or in the United States, the open wheels or stock car routes?
Yeah, I definitely believe so. As you mentioned, the fact that the hypercar can run IMSA, WEC, and then with the regulations getting closer, especially for Le Mans, a lot of manufacturers are entering the hypercar class. Of course, with the big Le Mans goal in mind, but of course, it is such a expensive project to put on track an hypercar that of course they will have to gain that experience in order to before winning the Le Mans Classic, the big Le Mans race. They will have to prove themselves in either WEC or IMSA. So I think definitely you have a point saying that also for female drivers that could mean a pathway in their career to go to sports car racing, especially since single seaters both in Europe, a little less in North America, but definitely more than sports car are so incredibly expensive. So we could be onto something here because of course we've seen Sophia Flush for example doing extremely well in LMP2 cars, and she told us that she really likes driving that car because it's not that far off from the Formula 3 car that she was racing the year before she entered endurance racing for the first time. It's still a high downforce car with that it drives pretty closely to as they drive a Formula car. And with Formula One being, more and more difficult to get in, even for drivers that we've seen, for example, Jamie Chadwick, even winning at that top level in Formula 3 regional level. You're still really struggling to get a seat in FIA Formula 3 and an FIA Formula 2, which ultimately leads to F1 seat. It's a little bit different for IndyCar, for the IndyCar path, but also IndyCar is, as you know, the seats are not that many, and of course we hope that with Simona de Silvestro there and Tatiana Calderon also did some races, and we hopefully we will see some more female drivers there. But sports car racing, I do believe what you just said, Joe. We are entering a golden era for sports car racing. And let me tell one more thing. We've seen in these couple of weekends a lot of the general public being not really satisfied about the fun experience at Formula One. We've seen this, for example, in Monza and in Zandvoort also. With prices being quite ridiculous, frankly. Also in the races in America, like in Miami and Vegas, we've seen some frankly laughable prices for the tickets there, even for general admission. Next weekend, we will have the 4 hour of Spa-Francorchamps in European Le Mans Series. So really top class endurance championships and racing with drivers who just really extraordinary drivers. And some of them we've seen, for example, with Nick De Vries, going from an LMP2 car to Formula One, what he has been doing. And the general admission ticket will be for free of charge, and with 15 euro. And I'm talking 15 euro, 15, you get the chance to get on the grid before the start and in the paddock. So, I mean, yeah, think about it and think about how the potential that sports car racing has in the future.
Yeah, that's the big thing here in the United States. IMSA, they tout on how you could get access to the drivers, to the grid, whereas NASCAR, Formula One, those are much higher price point, not exactly for the most general admission price set point. But yeah, definitely, I think sports car racing, it's going to be very exciting to see the growth of sports car racing in this upcoming year and future years. Definitely very exciting news and a very exciting outlook for sports car racing. This past race weekend, it's already started last night with Bristol Motor Speedway, a short track that NASCAR commonly visits annually. However, 32 degrees of banking. So this allows the teams to drive through that course at extremely high speed pace. Dick Trickle once said he compared it to having jet fighters in a bull ring flying around because these cars are going fast, a lot of quick times, but very little time to respond to trouble. In the truck series, we had Haley Deegan. Her season hasn't been that great at all, really. She started 18th in this race. It used to be prior to a rule change in NASCAR, if you started, I believe, 24th or worse, you were on the backstretch pit. So you had a full course caution and the pace car was out. If you were pitting on that backstretch pit road, you always had a disadvantage because you got on your pits much later and then you will lose a bunch of spots regardless of how fast your pit stop was. Well, that wasn't the case for quite some time. And for Haley Deegan to secure a good pit stall start, qualifying 18th, not bad. And with that rule, you can now pit on the back or the front stretch because that penalty is no longer there. Overall, she finished 14th at Bristol last night. There was 26 trucks on the lead lap, so she was on the lead lap. It was very competitive. Out of 32 finishers, which finished the race, there was 36 that started the race. So it wasn't that much of a what we call quite often in Bristol a chaotic race where you had caution after caution, trucks, cars just going out. We've seen that times where you've only had maybe 12 vehicles on the lead lap, only half the field finish. So overall, for 32 finishers, really pretty good race overall. Right now, Haley Deegan, she is 27 points outside the top 20 in the point stands. For quite some time, she was way lower in the points. She's slowly starting to build some momentum, get a little higher up. If she could get in the top 20 in the points, that would be a huge turnaround compared to where she was much earlier in the season in the truck series. And Dan, one of the interesting things, there's a rumor that she might be given the opportunity to race an Xfinity Series car. Of course, she's with Ford. If she's looking at Ford, it'd probably be a Stewart Haas racing Ford, which that could be essentially a ladder. One of the questions I have here in the United States, it seems like there's been some drivers that go into the truck series. They just don't seem to drive the truck really well, don't get the great results, but then they go back into a Xfinity car, and they just seem to do a lot better match. Is there any equivalent in Europe where you've seen where there's a series on whether it's the ladder system in sports car or open wheel where one particular car may not suit the driver, they may not get the best results, but then they go a step higher or two steps higher and they just seem to really excel?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we can see this straight from karting, for example. Some drivers that were really, really good in karting when they made the switch to single seaters, they were for some reason not as quick, or the other way around. Or also, for example, from GT4 to GT3, some drivers that are really good in GT4, then they struggle in GT3, or maybe on the other hand, we can have drivers that have been struggling in GT4, then for some reason they tried GT3 and they're flying. So yes, definitely we do have similar experiences here. And as you mentioned, that could be a good move for Haley Deegan, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the famous drivers that I thought, okay, only had one Xfinity Series win, didn't do anything to impress me. When they announced that Jimmy Johnson was going to the Cup Series, I thought, good luck. Wow, he really proved me wrong by going out there and just becoming another 7-time champion in the Cup Series. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Haley Deegan. Definitely one big story as well, too, Dan, we had to talk about was Miki Koyama, her big accomplishment, and then, of course, Simona de Silvestro wrapping up another season in IndyCar.
Oh yeah, one of the biggest news of the last weekend was definitely Miki Koyama, former W Series driver, winning the Formula Regional Japan Championship title. She's been really, really dominant this year. She won 7 races out of the 14 run this year. 2 more to go. So she won the championship with still 1 round and a double header to go in Suzuka. They were racing in Fuji as a support series of the WEC race. And really Miki was kind of dominating the championship already, so she needed some strong results, and she did so by claiming a pole position in race 1, second place in race 1, and then won race 2. And with the victory, she rounded up the championship. And it's particularly interesting because she didn't qualify to the top 8 last year in W Series. She had a very strong first year in 2019 and the inaugural W Series championship. There, she had a lot of technical issue last year in W Series, the all-female championship. And so she was on her own this year. But she was picked up by the Toyota young driver program, Toyota Gazoo Racing young driver program, which really gave her the opportunity to race again at high level in Formula Regional Japan. I would say that probably the Formula Regional Japan is on a good trend. Probably is not as competitive as the Formula Regional Asian Championship or the European Championship. But still, it's a really good car to progress in a single seater. So of course it's not the same car because they're not using the Tattoos chassis. They're using a dome chassis, but it's really close. The grids are not as big, but it's absolutely amazing what Miki has been doing this year. She, as I mentioned, she was dominant, so definitely a great season to bounce back after last year in W Series. And I think also it's an important step for Toyota because she really proved what she can do in her first year as part of the young driver program. And she made history because she was the very first woman to win a single FIA sanctioned single seater mixed gender single seaters championship. If we count Jamie Chadwick as the first woman to win a FIA single seater, but in W Series last year, she would be Miki Koyama became the first woman to win a mixed gender single seaters at Formula 3 level also, so very good. And it's going to be interesting to see what Miki can do next year, because as part of the Toyota program, I think they will have to give her some good opportunities after proving her worth in the Formula Regional Japan this year. And also there's a good pathway in Japan because of course they have Super Formula, which is extremely competitive. Also in sports car they have Super GT, which is extremely competitive. So I think if she stays in Japan, she has some great opportunities with especially with a manufacturer like Toyota.
Yeah, Toyota, Honda, Japan, Motorsports, that's always such a hugely competitive area. Now, one of the things, of course, when we're talking about competition, Simona de Silvestro, overall, Daniel, we know she ran a partial schedule, came into Laguna Seca. It always seems if you're running a partial schedule, you're just trying to build a team up. With Laguna Seca, how you felt the team perform at that race considering their schedule that they had this year?
I think you said it perfectly. As a partial campaign, you're building the team, and especially, and this is true for any driver, but especially with a new team. I mean, they had run one race, the Indianapolis 500 last year. So this is also not just a driver that is trying to come back to a championship after being quite a lot of years away with a car that is quite different now, how it is driven with the aeroscreen and all. But we are talking about a brand new team. So with everyone is they're building the team effectively, as you mentioned. And I think they did it pretty well in Laguna Seca. It probably was their strongest race. I was watching from the live timing her performances, her times, and I think she had good pace, especially in the second part of the race. She had at one point her pace was not far off from the top 10. Of course, they will have to improve a little bit in qualifying because, of course, that's a big part of the whole weekend. But the race pace was really good in the race, and I think if they can put together some more races next year, that is telling a little bit more of the story, because it was initially a 3-race program, and then they managed to fit in the 4th race. They were trying to put some mileage in, and then it was unfortunate that in Nashville they were out quite quickly, because it was really important for them to get mileage. But apart from that, I think if as I mentioned, as if they can do some more races next year, we will see Simona or possibly any other drivers, because we haven't had any official announcements yet. But I would believe that with Simona's experience, they will try to bring her on board again. The team can improve quite significantly.
Yeah, it seems like third year they could really try to improve significantly. And of course, one of the big things that's key in motorsports, getting that sponsorship funding to race more and more frequently. Overall, IndyCar, that was a very competitive season. We saw Beretta Autosport coming in, building up a championship effort team. It's going to be a long ways, but I feel like with Simona, the experience she has, they're on that right track. Overall, Dan, when it comes to IndyCar, we talked about it on Grid Live. We felt it was one of the most competitive series, especially out of the 8 in the grid ranking. Do you feel for such a new team, Simona, this is sort of the biggest test is IndyCar? Because it seems like any other sport, yeah, IndyCar, it is sort of what people call a spec series. You all have the same chassis, engine from Chevy or Honda, but it just seems like this is just a huge undertaking because it's so competitive.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, it is true that it is a spec series, but also, for example, take FIA Formula 2 or the FIA Formula 3. Not every team is equal. You've seen, and this is also for IndyCar. Well, in IndyCar, it's been a little bit more competitive, with more teams having the opportunities to win races throughout the season. There's always something happening, and so you do get the chance to score high points and podium, or even a race victory, even if you're not racing in a really top team. But on the longer run, it's always the same teams that win the championships, because, and this is true obviously also for Formula 2 and Formula 3 and all the high level spec single seaters championships. Because it's quite easy. You get more money, you get more testing, you get more parts and equipment and all that stuff, and you win the championships. So this is pretty much a matter of getting the more funding, and the most established team are getting more funding. So of course, when you have a new team to build from scratch, like Beretta Autosport, you're gonna need some time to build that. And but I think they're on the right path.
They seem to be on the right path. Of course, everyone in IndyCar, they're always trying to get that next level, so it just gets harder and harder. But I think overall, they're in a good position, and especially 2023. We haven't seen the schedule yet, but I think once we see the schedule, they'll have a good idea of some of their strengths and really start to gear up for 2023. 2022, ARC Menard Series, they already saw the crowning of one of their champions last night at Bristol. But before we start with Bristol, we have to recap the Kansas race over for the ARC Menard Series. Of course, their race was postponed from Saturday to Sunday. The Kansas 150, and overall, we saw Amber Balkan in her number 30. She came home 8th place, started 10th, completed 104 out of the 105 laps at Kansas Speedway. Only 6 drivers finished on the lead lap. Amber and Kristen Rose were the only 2 to finish 1 lap down to the leader, while Tony Brediger, she started 13th and finished 9th place, 2 laps down. So overall, top 10 finish effort for both racers. However, at the Bush's Baked Bean 200 and So City Showdown race last night at Bristol Motor Speedway prior to the Truck Series race, different story. Stephanie Moore was also on hand to become the 3rd female racer in that race. And overall, Bristol Motor Speedway, as I mentioned, is a tough short track. And unfortunately for lap 11, Amber, she had contact from behind. A lot of people call it the Bristol Stomp, Bristol Bump, the bump and run. Fortunately for her, she got spun into the outside wall, tail end first, damage. She was done for the day. Tony Brediger was on a little bit of a higher line. She had to spin to try to avoid hard contact, made some slight contact with Amber, while Amber finished unfortunately last in this race. Tony Branniger finished 16th place, 6 laps behind the leader. Considering where she was on the 11th lap, could have been a lot worse, but overall, to finish only 6 laps behind the leader despite the rough start, something where for that team, they could at least say, hey, we keep going and trying to put together a good solid race, and especially at Bristol, a really tough track. Stephanie Moore, unfortunately, she only completed 113 laps out of the 200. She came home 21st, so not exactly a good day at Bristol Motor Speedway, one of the toughest short tracks, and overall, in my opinion, one of the toughest tracks to win at, because since they redone the speedway, it's slowly going back to a one groove speedway, so the corners, there's not a second groove. You have to push the vehicle ahead of you out of the way or try to get under them, exiting the corner. This weekend, I think it's going to be a chaotic one. I don't know if you ever seen a Cup Series race there, Daniel, but I think it's not exactly going to be a caution-free race, put it that way. I think it's going to be a lot of being and banging. We're going to see some fighting. That's this weekend. Daniel, what are some of the other races you're going to be looking at this weekend as well?
Plenty of races again this weekend, and just adding one more thing about that ARCA race. Stephanie Moyer was also part of the ARCA East Championship, and she finished. Well, she, as you mentioned, she didn't have the best weekend ever, but she still finished fourth in the championship in the East ARCA East Championship, and that is the highest finish for a female driver in that series. So, pretty good result at the end of the day for Stephanie Moyer. Coming to next weekend, this upcoming weekend, really, Iron Dames are going back on track with this time with Dorian Pan in the Ferrari Challenge Europe. They're racing at Silverstone, so Dorian will be racing in the Pirelli Trophy, while Manuela, Corinna Gosner, and also Lisa Clark, American driver, will race in the Shell Cup. Also, we have the third round of the Italian GT Endurance Series that will be hosted at Vallelunga and the outskirts of Rome, where the former series champion Francesca Linossi will contest her second race this year at the wheel of the Antonelli Motorsport Mercedes AMG GT3. Then we have a Finnish racer Milla Makkila racing in the V8 Thunder series in Finland. They are racing at Avenisto. She is battling for the second place in the overall championship. Then we have some races in the US at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin. We have the USF Juniors with Maite Cáceres, a very good Uruguayan young driver, and also Madison House. They were both a part of the selections in W Series earlier this year. So they are having some more experience this year in Formula 4 cars. They also race in Formula 4 US, and now they switch to the US Juniors. Then also in Formula 4 cars, we have in Japan Ryo Shimano racing in the Formula 4 Japan. She at Sports and Sugo. She was racing in the touring cars last year, so it's kind of a learning-oriented season in single seaters for Rio. Then we have the FIA World Rallycross with the Clara Andersson, a really good Swedish driver. It's her first year in as a full-time driver at the top level of World Rallycross. They are racing in Portugal this weekend. As you mentioned, we had the ARCA Menards, the NASCAR tracks. Also, we will have the Porsche Sprint Cup Challenge Scandinavia with a 17-year-old Norwegian driver, Isabel Rustad. She will make a debut in GT4 cars at the wheel of the Porsche Cayman GT4. Then also in Porsche, in the Porsche One Make series, but this time in the German series that is racing actually in Misano in Italy, we have Kerry Schreiner. She's racing pretty much in a lot of championships, so we have to kind of keep track of what she's racing on a week-to-week basis. Then we have a very interesting event. It's not championship; it's an event. It's a Goodwood Revival in the UK. It's one of the biggest events for classic cars in the UK. And it's underway right now. We have a very cool team. Katerina Kivalova is teaming up with Simona de Silvestro. So just after finishing the season in IndyCar, she's back in the UK and she's racing this weekend in a 1954 Cooper Jaguar T33, which actually belongs to Katarina Kivalova. So a really cool event, and they will be racing in the Freddie Marsh Memorial Trophy at Goodwood. Katarina, of course, is a big name in classic cars. She's been racing at the Le Mans Classic. She's been racing in Monaco Historique, the Mille Miglia and Goodwood. So a very big name in classic car racing. And she's also racing in contemporary cars, by the way. She won the Portimao 24-hour in a GT4 Mercedes. Then we have also the very important event, this one. It's going to be the final round of the FIA Karting World Championship at Sarno, near Naples in Italy. We have 8 female drivers. Of course, we have like an entry list of 200 drivers across the 2 categories, the AOK and the OK Junior classes. But we have 8 female drivers. One is Ada Turpeinen, she's from Finland. Carmen Krav from Estonia. Sofia Kotala, also from Finland. Ella Stevens from the UK. She's also coached by James from Alice Powell. So another driver that Alice is looking after. Emma Felbermeyer, Luna Fluxa, she's Spanish, and she is in the Mercedes AMG Young Driver Program. So also a driver that she's really young, but she has already some connections to F1 teams. Zoe Florescu Potolea, she's from Romania. She was also part of the FIA Girls on Track program, and she went she's through to the finals, just as Mathilda Patz, that she's also in the FIA Karting World Championship this weekend from Germany. So quite a lot of races to follow, not as many as last weekend, but we will be very busy to keep track of the results of all of them and report in next week episode.
And as always, you can follow all the races on racersbehindthehelmet.com. Busy weekend, but they got a useful calendar where you can click and see all the female racers that are racing throughout the weekend. And of course, be sure to check out their homepage as well at Racers Behind the Helmet. There you can see the full listing of articles, news stories from upcoming races, past races, and what some of the upcoming racers are doing. Big news throughout the race weekend, as always, report on racersbehindthehelmet.com. And Daniel, one other race that I'll be following as well, the National Hot Rod Association here in the United States, they're starting their countdown to the championship, their version of the playoffs. Several female racers there, including Brittany Force, Erica Anders, going for a championship. So overall, a busy race weekend. As we're starting to get to that point, September, a couple series like IndyCar, Formula E, they're already done. We're going to be getting more and more series wrapping up as we conclude 2022 and get ready for 2023. We're going to conclude our program here, so we encourage everyone once again, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. YouTube to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or buy me a coffee, and be sure to visit our social media pages. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're going to be posting Pick a Winner later today. So comment, who do you think is going to win the MotoGP race and the NASCAR Cup Series race at Bristol? 2 very entertaining races. And of course, we're going to preview them tomorrow on Grid Live pre-race, and then Grid Live wrap up Sunday, noon Eastern, since all the races will be done much earlier in the day. And before the end of the day, be sure to visit public.com. You get $5 in free stock. You use the referral code GRIDnet. Big thing, of course, the stock market. It's only 5 days a week, so this is a wonderful opportunity. Click on the link below, use our referral code, get some free stocks, and start investing in the stock market. For Daniel Zeri at Racers, the Girls Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.